Let's be honest, most people are too scared to tell you directly if they dislike you. Instead, they hide behind phony smiles, insincere compliments, and forced courtesy. I've been there myself, believing someone was a friend only to discover they were actually wishing for my failure. It's tough, but here's the reality. If you don't learn to spot the signs, you'll waste time and energy on people who fundamentally don't get you. So, let's cut through the nonsense and identify the signs that someone dislikes you but is hiding it. You might not like what you find, but confronting the truth is better than living in denial. 1. They constantly make jokes at your expense. We've all encountered that person who always seems to have a joke, especially when it's about you. They target your quirks, mistakes, and imperfections, masking their comments with a smile and a claim of, "just kidding." Initially, it might seem harmless, but these jokes often go beyond light-hearted teasing. They are carefully crafted digs designed to erode your self-esteem gradually. I remember a period when someone close to me always had something to criticize about my appearance, speech, or even the projects I worked on. When I first started noticing the jokes aimed at me, I brushed them off, thinking they were just harmless fun. However, over time, I began to see a pattern. The humor was always targeted at my perceived shortcomings rather than my strengths. This led me to question myself, wondering if I was indeed the problem, and if these flaws were as significant as they were made out to be. Here's the real issue. People who frequently mock your flaws aren't doing it out of fondness. They're gauging how much disrespect you'll tolerate. This is a subtle tactic for establishing dominance and keeping you in a subordinate position. Essentially, they're making it clear that they see themselves as superior. The most insidious part is that society often tells us that, if we can't handle such jokes, we're the ones at fault. But let's challenge that notion. There's absolutely nothing wrong with standing up for yourself when a joke goes too far. In fact, it's crucial. You deserve to be surrounded by people who uplift you, not those who bring you down for a cheap laugh. True friends celebrate your strengths and support you in addressing your weaknesses, without turning you into the punchline. I've witnessed it repeatedly. People let these kinds of jokes pass, thinking it's simpler to avoid conflict than to confront the issue. But here's the deeper truth. Allowing others to disrespect you, even in small ways, can be a dangerous path. It often starts with minor comments, but over time, those jabs can erode your self-esteem, making you question your own worth. The more you tolerate it, the more they will push, leaving you in self-doubt just because you didn't want to appear overly sensitive. I learned this lesson the hard way. I realized that by laughing along, I was essentially giving them permission to continue. I was complicit in my own disrespect. It wasn't until I began to set boundaries and push back that I noticed a change, not only in how they treated me, but also in how I viewed myself. I stopped letting their words define me and began to take control of my own story. So here's my advice. The next time someone makes a joke at your expense, don't just brush it off. Ask yourself if the joke is truly funny, or if there's something more insidious happening. If it's the latter, don't hesitate to call them out. It might be uncomfortable and could even jeopardize the friendship, but your self-respect is far more valuable than someone's misguided sense of humor. In the end, life is too short to be surrounded by people who fail to recognize your worth if their version of friendship involves constant criticism. If you find yourself surrounded by people who constantly highlight your flaws, it's time to seek out new friends. True friends won't need to belittle you to feel superior. So hold your head high, speak up, and don't let anyone turn you into the butt of their jokes. 2. They give compliments that feel more like insults. We've all experienced this. Someone offers what seems like a compliment, but instead of feeling good, you're left with a sour taste, as if you've been hit with a velvet glove. It's the kind of praise that makes you pause and question whether it was genuinely positive or subtly negative. Often, it's a mix of both. These veiled compliments are a covert way for people to undermine you while feigning kindness. I recall a moment when I was incredibly proud of a major project I had poured my heart into. After dedicating countless hours, I shared it with a group of colleagues. One person, whom I believed to be a supporter, remarked with a smile, "Wow, this is actually pretty good for someone like you." I was taken aback. On the surface, it seemed like praise, but those final words, "for someone like you," felt like a heavy blow. Was I not expected to produce good work? This is where the issue lies. These so-called compliments often carry a hidden agenda. These types of comments aren't meant to uplift you. They're crafted to keep you in your place. It's a subtle power move, allowing the person delivering the compliment to assert their superiority while sowing seeds of doubt about your own abilities. They're essentially saying, "I see you making an effort, but you'll never reach my level." It's toxic, but it's disguised so nicely that the underlying negativity can be hard to spot. Let's be honest. People who offer backhanded compliments are often insecure themselves. They recognize your potential and strengths, which intimidates them. So, they throw in these sneaky remarks to keep you doubting yourself and prevent you from achieving too much. It's like they're patting you on the back while holding you down with the other hand. Here's the kicker. We've all done it at some point, perhaps unintentionally. We've let our own insecurities slip out as disguised compliments, meant to remind someone else of their place. But here's the crucial point. You don't have to accept this covert hostility. You have the power to reject it and see it for what it truly is, a reflection of the other person's insecurities, not a measure of your own worth. When someone says something like, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is impressive for someone new," don't just swallow it. Call it out for what it is, even if it feels uncomfortable. By doing so, you're not letting them control how you perceive yourself, a power you should never relinquish. I've learned to view these remarks for what they are, a reflection of someone else's insecurities. Recognizing this helps diminish their impact, allowing you to brush off their comments because in reality, their words say more about them than they do about you. When I encounter a backhanded compliment, I don't just brush it off. Instead, I'll respond with something like, "Thanks, but could you clarify what you meant by that?" This approach forces them to face the underlying insult in their comment, and it often puts them on the defensive. They quickly realize that you're not willing to play along with their game, and it's surprising how their attitude can shift in response. The key takeaway is not to let subtle negativity shape your self-worth. Whether it comes from a supposedly well-intentioned friend, an envious colleague, or even a family member, remember, your value isn't open to debate. Compliments should elevate you, not make you doubt yourself. If someone's remarks leave you questioning your worth, it's time to question their motives instead. Life is too short to invest in relationships with those who can't genuinely celebrate your achievements. Surround yourself with people who recognize your worth and express it without any hidden agendas. 3. They subtly leave you out of plans. It's often the small things that hurt the most, like discovering that your so-called friends accidentally forgot to include you in their dinner, party, or weekend getaway. They might insist it was a mistake, a last-minute decision, or worse, assume you were too busy to join. But let's face it, these aren't mere oversights. This is a form of social exclusion, and it's a clear indication that you may not be as valued as you thought. I've experienced this too often. I recall a weekend when I checked my phone and saw photos of a group of friends enjoying an event I would have loved to attend. The twist? Not one person had mentioned it to me in advance. When I casually brought it up later, they were full of excuses. "We thought you were busy," or "It was such a last-minute thing." But I knew better. If they had genuinely wanted me there, they would have made sure I knew about it. Here's where it gets contentious. This type of exclusion isn't just careless, it's intentional. It's a way of sending a message without directly confronting you. They don't want you there, but lack the courage to say it openly, so they hope you'll quietly drift away without making a fuss. It's passive-aggressive and cowardly, yet unfortunately, quite common. People often avoid discussing this because it's easier to convince ourselves it's just an oversight or mistake rather than acknowledge the painful reality of being intentionally left out. But here's the truth. If you keep accepting these excuses, you're allowing them to continue sidelining you. You're letting them dictate your place in their lives instead of taking charge of your own story. I had to learn this the hard way. For a while, I kept quiet, hoping that maybe next time I'd be included. But I eventually realized that by staying silent, I was merely allowing myself to be treated as an afterthought. So I took a bold step and started addressing the issue directly. I'd say something like, "I noticed you all went out last weekend. Why wasn't I invited?" It wasn't comfortable and definitely created some awkward moments, but it also forced them to face their actions. The result? The dynamics shifted. Some became defensive, while others tried to make amends. But the main takeaway was clear. I wasn't willing to be sidelined without standing up for myself. Here's the crucial point. If people genuinely want you in their lives, they'll make an effort to include you, no matter how spontaneous the plans might be. If they don't, it's time to reconsider the worth of those relationships. You deserve to be around people who don't make you feel like you're perpetually seeking their approval or attention. True friends don't forget to include you. They ensure you're part of their plans because they genuinely value your presence. So if you find yourself repeatedly left out, don't just let it slide. Confront it, ask the tough questions, and brace yourself for the responses, even if they're hard to hear. Ultimately, it's better to know your true standing than to keep wondering why you're excluded. Remember, you're not a fallback option. You deserve to be a priority, so choose to surround yourself with people who treat you like one. 4. They're only too busy when it involves you. We've all heard the excuse, "I'm so busy these days, sorry I can't hang out." It's a convenient cover since who isn't busy these days? But what happens when you start seeing a trend? They always seem to have time for others, sharing photos of their social events and catching up with mutual friends. But when it comes to you, they're mysteriously unavailable. Here's the blunt truth. They're not actually too busy. They're just too busy for you. I found myself in this frustrating scenario more times than I'd like to admit. I remember reaching out to a friend I used to be close with, trying to arrange a meetup. Every time I proposed a plan, there was an excuse. "I'm working late, I have too much on my plate, maybe next week." Meanwhile, I'd see them out with others, always managing to find time for everyone except me. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to recognize the pattern. The message was clear. I wasn't a priority in their life anymore. Here's where it gets controversial. We've been conditioned to accept being pushed aside with the excuse of being busy. But let's be real. People make time for what and who they truly care about. If someone is perpetually unavailable when it comes to you, it's not about their schedule, it's about their priorities. It boils down to their priorities, and that's a tough realization because it makes you face the uncomfortable truth that you might not matter to them as much as they do to you. The blunt reality is that busy often serves as a polite euphemism for, "I'm not interested in spending time with you." It's simpler for them to attribute it to their schedule rather than admit they're deliberately excluding you from their life. This is a passive-aggressive way of keeping you at a distance without confronting the reality of their choice to keep you out. They want to keep you on standby, just in case, without actually putting any effort into the relationship. I've experienced both sides of this scenario. There were times when I used excuses because I didn't know how to admit that I had moved on from a friendship. However, being on the receiving end of such behavior taught me a crucial lesson. It's better to be upfront, even if it's awkward, than to drag someone along with false reasons. When I finally confronted my friend about their constant busyness, the conversation was uncomfortable, but it was a crucial step. It provided the clarity I needed to redirect my time and energy toward relationships where I was genuinely appreciated. Here's the essential takeaway. Your time and energy are valuable. Don't squander them on people who can't be bothered to make time for you. If someone is perpetually too busy for you, it's time to reassess that relationship. You deserve to be around individuals who are genuinely excited to see you, who make an effort to include you in their lives, not just when it's convenient for them, but because they truly enjoy your presence. It's important to understand that people and relationships evolve. Sometimes we cling to relationships out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, even when it's clear that the other person has moved on. There's strength in recognizing that you deserve more than being someone's second choice. It's not about being demanding or needy. It's about valuing yourself enough to step away from those who don't reciprocate that value. 5. They steer clear of physical contact. Let's address a significant issue: physical contact, or rather the absence of it. This isn't just about romantic relationships. Physical touch is a fundamental part of human interaction that helps build connections and trust. So what does it signify when someone goes out of their way to avoid even the slightest touch? The reality is quite telling. They're signaling discomfort around you, and it's important to take note. I once had a coworker who seemed to shrink away whenever I attempted a handshake or a friendly pat on the back. Initially, I thought it might be my imagination, but it soon became clear that their reluctance wasn't limited to me. They were warm and engaging with everyone else, but avoided contact with me as if I were a pariah. Eventually, I recognized that their avoidance of physical touch wasn't just an odd habit. It was a purposeful attempt to keep me at a distance. Here's where it gets contentious. Physical contact is a natural aspect of human relationships. When someone consistently shuns it, they're expressing a lack of comfort or connection with you. While some people may not be particularly tactile by nature, it's different when they're perfectly comfortable hugging others, but become stiff around you. When someone consistently avoids physical contact, it's a red flag that something is amiss. They might not openly express their discomfort, but their body language speaks volumes. We've all experienced this from both perspectives. Perhaps you've shied away from a handshake or leaned back when someone came too close because the connection didn't feel right. Alternatively, you might have found yourself on the receiving end, puzzled by why someone seems to recoil when you're near. It's awkward and uncomfortable, often indicating that the relationship isn't as solid as you might have hoped. Here's the deeper reality. Physical contact is a key aspect of human connection, serving as a means to express trust, warmth, and empathy. When someone deliberately avoids touching you, they're not just evading physical contact. They're sidestepping closeness, intimacy, and vulnerability. They're keeping you at a distance both literally and figuratively, signaling that there's a fundamental issue in the relationship. I've learned to recognize these signals, even when it's tough to accept their meaning. There was a period when I overlooked these signs, telling myself that someone's reluctance to get close was merely a personality quirk. However, the more I reflected, the clearer it became that the issue was with me and our relationship. Addressing the situation eventually led to difficult conversations, and in some cases, the end of the relationship. But it also relieved me from the frustration of not understanding why things felt off. So here's the crucial takeaway. Don't dismiss the signs when someone avoids physical contact with you. When someone consistently avoids physical contact, it's more than just a matter of personal preference. It's a clear indicator of their comfort and connection with you. If you start noticing this pattern, don't shy away from addressing it. Confronting the issue might lead to a deeper understanding, or, alternatively, reveal that the relationship isn't as strong as you believed. Regardless, facing the truth is far better than living in denial. Remember, you deserve relationships where physical contact isn't something to be dodged, but rather something that occurs naturally and comfortably. Whether it's a friendly hug, a handshake, or just sitting close without feeling uneasy, these small gestures help build trust and connection. If someone repeatedly avoids these forms of contact, it's a sign that something is off. Don't hesitate to ask the difficult questions and, if needed, make the hard decisions. Life is too short to be around people who keep you at a distance, both physically and emotionally. 6. They vanish when you need support. Let's be honest, nothing truly tests a relationship like a crisis. During tough times, you discover who your real friends are. So what does it mean when someone disappears precisely when you need them the most? It's not just a sign of inconsistency. It's a glaring indication that they might not be as committed to you as you thought. When someone pulls away during your darkest moments, it's a clear signal that their investment in the relationship is lacking. It's not just painful, it feels like a betrayal. I learned this lesson the hard way during a particularly challenging period in my life. I was facing a serious personal crisis, something that shook me deeply. Naturally, I reached out to what I thought were close friends, hoping for some form of support, even if it was just a text or a brief call. Instead, I was met with silence. The friends I counted on suddenly had every excuse imaginable. I'm swamped with work. Sorry, I'm just really busy right now. I'll get back to you later. Spoiler alert, they never did. Here's the controversial truth. Many people will claim they're always there for you, but when the going gets tough, they often disappear. They'll celebrate with you, share in your joy, and enjoy the high points of your life. But when things get rough, they're nowhere to be found. It's easier for them to vanish than to confront your struggles or discomfort. Deep down, they don't care enough to support you when it truly matters. Let's be brutally honest. Real support isn't about being there when it's convenient. It's about standing by you during the hard times, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's the last thing anyone wants to do. When someone vanishes just when you need them most, they're not just being thoughtless, they're revealing their true stance in your life. They're silently saying that your troubles aren't worth their time. I remember the crushing disappointment I felt when I discovered that the people I had supported through their breakups, family issues, and job struggles couldn't reciprocate when I was in need. It was a harsh wake-up call, but it was a lesson I had to learn. Not everyone who appears friendly is genuinely supportive. Here's the underlying truth. True support is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. It's easy for someone to be present and supportive when things are going well. The real measure of a relationship is how people behave when everything falls apart. If someone disappears at your lowest point, they're not just letting you down, they're showing you they were never genuinely committed to being there for you. However, don't let their absence make you cynical. Instead, let it refine your perspective and help you recognize who truly deserves a place in your life. The ones who stay by your side, who check in, and who offer support even when it's inconvenient, are the ones who truly matter. Those are the relationships worth nurturing. You should cherish and cultivate these connections, as life is too brief to spend on fair-weather friends. Surround yourself with people who will stand by you through tough times, not just enjoy the good ones. When you find those rare individuals who remain steadfast when things are tough, you've discovered something truly valuable. As for those who vanish, let them go. They've already shown you who they really are. I once confided in someone I considered a close friend, sharing a personal issue I needed to unload. I trusted this person to keep our conversation private. Yet, within days, the details began to spread, distorted, and exaggerated. It felt like a game of telephone, except instead of the message getting lost, it was being turned against me. My vulnerability became a source of entertainment for others. Here's the harsh truth. People who gossip about you aren't just sharing idle chatter or expressing concern. They're playing a manipulative power game. Gossip allows them to elevate themselves at your expense, all while avoiding direct confrontation. It's a cowardly and toxic behavior that undermines the very essence of trust in a relationship. And let's be clear, if someone gossips about others to you, they're definitely gossiping about you to others. It's a pattern, not a one-off incident. I've seen it happen repeatedly. Someone who eagerly shares others' secrets will go silent around you, likely because they're sharing your secrets when you're not around. Gossip is a particularly insidious form of betrayal because it occurs behind your back, leaving you unaware and unable to defend yourself. I had a personal experience where I confronted a friend who had been spreading rumors about me. I hoped for an apology or at least an explanation, but they dismissed it as trivial, claiming it was merely casual chatter. However, the reality is that gossip is never just harmless talk. It's a fundamental breach of trust and reflects more about the person spreading it than it does about the person being talked about. Now let's talk about another red flag: gossip. Gossip is like a social toxin that spreads rapidly and can destroy relationships almost instantly. It's rarely as harmless as it seems. When someone you consider a friend talks about you behind your back, they're not merely sharing trivial stories. They're undermining your trust, tarnishing your reputation, and damaging your relationship. The reality is, if they gossip about you, it's a clear sign of disrespect, no matter how friendly they seem in person. I've been on the receiving end of such gossip, and it's one of the most painful experiences. There was a time when I confided in someone, only to find out later that they were spreading my personal issues to others.